Are we live? Go. Good evening, guys. Thanks for coming out tonight. We're at Classic Car Restoration Club live Q&A. And again, I'm joined by Ross Kiehl and Terry Wright. And, you know, again, I've challenged you all to come up with plenty of good, hard paint and body questions for Terry, just where we haven't stumped him yet. But come on, guys. I know you can up the game here.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It's coming. We're going to get there. Okay. Thanks, guys, for getting some questions in early. It always helps us to get right off the bat. If you've got any, if along the way you've got something to add where you want to comment on somebody else's question, you know, this is an open discussion back and forth. We don't profess to know the answer to every question. Usually it's just a matter we know where to look to find the answers. So if you have something to add to the conversation, join right in and type it into the discussion. We'll read it out loud for everybody. Also down below here, you'll see a window for download the bolt circle guide. And what that is it's actually a resource that you can, you know, cut out, take with you in your wallet or in your back pocket. You go into a swap meet or junkyard, every once in a while you see a great set of wheels and you're not sure if they're going to fit your car in particular. This guide will, you know, help you help determine if it's the bolt circle you can use, and it also includes instructions how to use it. Yeah, it's not as great as one of these great hard plastic ones that are great to have in the shop, or if you specifically know you're going, great thing to have with you. But we don't always know that we're going to run across a great deal on a set of wheels, and having a resource like this where you can have it folded up in your back pocket, in your wallet, or even in your glove box, having it with you, you can always, you know, you've got a good tool to double check before. Don't always trust what somebody tells you it fits. And we've all been there. Sure. Of course, it's starting to warm up. Guys are starting to think about getting their cars out. If you're down in the southern United States, and you guys are probably already driving your cars and enjoying it, and you know, we feel really sorry for you. But up here, you know, we're still like, you know, kind of getting them ready to go. We've got the DeSoto back here that we've got almost all the front suspension completely tore out of it. We're going through and putting all new bushings and ball joints and tie rod ends and everything else to hopefully make the car a little bit tighter driving down the road this year. And with that, then we'll, like, you know, go on even longer cruises.
Yeah.
So what have you guys been up to then?
Playing?
Snowmobiling? You've been snowmobiling?
Fishing?
Yeah.
No snowmobiling for me anymore. I don't do that anymore. No, I'm just waiting for the weather to warm up so I can get back out.
All right, let's get into it. We got Wayne has got the first question out here. Wayne writes, he has a thumper cam for his small block Chevy. Should I use stock timing or what? And, you know, the thumper cam, it's a cam that's kind of designed to not necessarily be way off in performance from a good stock performance cam. It's just made it, they set it up so that it makes your engine have a good lope to it and good, not so aggressive that it idles poorly like a real high performance cam, but it has a good, you know, it adds some performance and has a good rumble to it. Most of the guys that I know that are running the thumper run pretty close to stock timing. You might be able to advance it a few degrees beyond stock timing, but you should, you know, I'd start with stock timing as your base and probably, you know, test it, you know, advancing it a little bit further and seeing how that acted.
I would agree.
Is it possible? No, I'm
Sure.
asking the question
go
now
ahead.
because I'm just the body guy, but could he be talking about cam timing? How the cam's timed compared to the crank?
I think the question is more ignition timing, but he could
Yeah.
be talking about cam timing. We'd have to get.
I don't think you'd go if it's unless it's real radical. I don't think you'd change cam timing.
Yeah, and yeah. It could, well, on that mile of a cam, it wouldn't pay to put a lot of extra timing into it.
So.
The Crete asks, I have an original 1941 Chevy Coupe. I had one of those when I was 16. Yeah.
Bring back memories.
Where'd that go?
Yeah. Well, it was a project that I never I started. I had it like running a few times, and I always had issues with it. Although then I had more time than I had money to do it right, and
it tore it apart and never put it back together.
No, it was running and drove when I sold it, but somebody else enjoyed it, I suppose. Right now I have bias ply tube tires. Is there anything I need to consider, such as wheels or tubes, by installing radials? I would like to use the original wheels if possible. Thanks for your help in advance. The 41 Chevy wheels, were all tube tires. It was you're getting close to the beginning of the tubeless era, if I recall correctly. I believe your tube tires. The thing you can mount radial tires to those rims. They're going to be real narrow rims, but you can mount radial tires to those rims. And it's best to use an inner tube still. But you need to make sure you use a radial inner tube, and they're constructed differently than a bias ply inner tube. There's not a lot of difference, but make sure when you buy inner tubes that they're rated for radials. And I know some guys that have switched those rims over to tubeless. You do need to be aware of the biggest holdback you're going to have is that valve stem hole size, because on a tube tire, it's big enough to fit that whole stem smoothly through there, where on a tubeless tire, on a normal tubeless rim, it's a much smaller hole generally, so that the valve stems fit in tight and they actually lock in place. So that would be the only consideration if you do have a rim. I can't recall exactly what the rims on 41 Chevy were, but and I'm not sure the one that I had the stock rims on it either. So, but yeah, that's something you would want to check and make sure before trying to make them tubeless. Otherwise, just make sure you use a radial inner tube when you do have the tires mounted on them, and take it to a shop where the people know how to properly mount a tire with inner tubes in it, which is usually not the corner quickie place that has a 16-year-old mounting tires in the back. Just about 16-year-old, because they've never seen a tube tire before. Okay. Meg writes, I have a 73 Ford F100. It lived and worked most of its life in rural Ohio. So it does have bad rust in a few spots. Cab mounts were shot, literally. It's not that rural. So I have it in a shop getting it fixed. What is the other common areas of rust problems? Maybe spots I should consider reinforcing sooner rather than later. There are two baseball-sized spots it rusted through in the bed near the tailgate. 73. That's the first year for that 73 to 79 body style. What I had a 78. What places rusted out on mine? Weird places like under the middle of the floor. And I don't know if there was some kind of brace or something under there. I do recall patching the floor.
Yeah, and if your cab mounts are rusted,
In any of those trucks, cab corners and rockers are usually the first things you look at. And for outside stuff, for the internal, you want to make sure um, all the cab mounts, all the places, anything mounts is solid.
because usually if the cab mounts are bad, the supports for the cab mounts on the body are bad.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Well, let's ask the body guy.
Well, yeah, I'd definitely look at wherever it's mounted to the frame for sure. For structural wise and safety wise, cosmetically, I'd say lower fenders and rocker panels and around the wheel houses and the box sides. They're usually pretty good for holding moisture and rusting out.
And usually the tailgates were prone to rusting out on those. But tailgates are pretty readily available for those right now. Where the hinges for the tailgate mount in that lower bottom area. Coming from Minnesota, we know everything about rust here. They start, all the roads up here right now are sort of a light white, off-colored white color, just not because of snow, it's because all the snow is starting to melt now. It's just the salt that's left behind. And all that, especially on any vehicle that's been driven, stuff gets everywhere, and it just raises heck with your entire underside of the car. So I would give it a good look anywhere. What I do with a lot of cars, used to have an ice pick. Nobody has those anymore, but you can take an awl or some kind of pick, that pointed pick, and I just go in and I start testing a lot of areas on a car that I want to check out, figure out, develop a game plan to go out and kind of get rid of the rust. Usually, and for me, involves first doing a whole overall assessment of what's weak and what needs to be replaced, and then then start acquiring what you need. You might want to replace some of the body panels. You might want to some of that year a truck. I think most of the body panels or rust areas are going to have patch panels for it. Of course, you always run into cases where you might need to fabricate something to fit.
I gotta believe you could buy just about any panel for that truck right now.
Yep.
Yeah, they were a popular body style, and they lasted, like Ford usually lasted a good long time with their body styles before they changed anything back then. So you should be able to find what you need, but like I say, start with a good assessment. Just go through and test a whole bunch of areas, and if you find something, take note, and then just kind of come up with a game plan to attack it. You want your cab and your box both to sit firmly on the frame, and you don't want it to. In a lot of cases, when they start rusting, then the cabs and the box start sinking down on the frame. You end up with a truck that looks like it's bent or something, but actually it's just the mounts that are going bad.
Frames do rust too.
Frames do rust too. And Ross here, he's the expert on having a rusty frame truck come in here. But they're good deals.
That's right.
Let's see. Possibly. Let's see. I get lost here. Okay. Also, the paint job seems to be original, but a few spots of the hood have possibly the top layer of paint peeling off. How can I fix that? I know zip about paint. Hey, we got the paint guy here, but I do love the original blue color. So he wants to keep his patina, but he doesn't want it to peel off. To me, if it's peeling, it's probably been repainted.
Yeah, most likely has been. Yep. Yeah, especially if there's blue paint underneath it.
Yeah. So is there any way he can stabilize that?
Not really. No. You can wax it and seal it up as much as you can to slow it down.
Well,
Maybe from letting
I know
go of
some of the
it.
guys that are like big into patina now.
Clear it.
They clear it.
Matte clear it.
They use like a dull clear, and some
Yeah,
guys
you
use a
definitely
gloss
can.
clear,
Yeah.
and it's like, geez, that looks like
That'll
crap.
seal it.
But you could
Yeah.
go with a matte
Or
clear.
if you want to retain that look, yeah, you can matte clear it for sure. It'll seal it, but I mean, what's the rest of the truck look like?
Yeah, well, yeah. And that becomes, your choice then at that point, whether you wanted to go through the work to do a complete, shiny paint job, make it look
Right.
like new, or try to keep some of that patina look. I know it's kind of trendy and popular right now if it's got, although I think some guys try to keep really bad patina sometimes, and
I tell you what, if I found an old car that was rust free and it just had some patina, and I kind of like that. It does something for me. Being a paint guy, I kind of like it.
there you go.
I mean, to each his own, but I do kind of like it.
You should hear if you've got cab mounts that are rusted. I gotta have holes in it.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Oh yeah, probably.
it's blue underneath and looks peeled, huh? All right, moving on. Uh, this guy re-asked his question on the tubeless tires. Apparently, it may have disappeared when they were setting things up for momentarily. Yeah, Steve writes, is it worth putting insulation behind the back seat of my 67 Firebird? I can tell you right now, it's a Firebird, so it's not going to do any good anyway. So.
Look at the time.
Oh,
Time
just
to go.
kidding, Steve.
Time to go.
Just because we have a Firebird guy
See,
here.
that wasn't a shot at you. It was a shot at me.
Also, should I put insulation on the back of the door side panels? If so, won't that make putting the door hardware back on more difficult, if not impossible? Yes. But let's get to the insulation question. We'll ask the guy who owns a 68 Firebird to start with.
Yeah, well, they come with jute backing behind the seat originally. If that's what you're talking about, I put mine back in for a couple of reasons. It does help with sound a little bit, but it also looks better when you open the trunk. You don't see the springs in the back seat. It helps with sound editing for sure if you want to. I just went to a upholstery shop and got some jute backing and
cut it out.
Cut it out and put it in there. I haven't done the door panels, but you can use some Dynamat or something.
Yeah, Dynamat works good the Dynamat stuff is really thin and it does a good job of knocking down the sound. And dealing with sound inside, it's probably the one place I probably don't do enough to stop. You're probably going to get a fair amount of sound through the door just because it's just the design and such. And I don't like putting Dynamat inside the door on the inside of the skin because it's also exposed to rain and water and everything else there. You're not gonna be able to put in one sheet of Dynamat in there. So then now you've got seams. And stuff can start moving around once the car's out in the sunlight and everything else. You got seams that can collect dirt and water and everything else. And they used to, even way back in the 30s, I've gone to many old car junkyards where you look at a car sitting there and it's got like rust in the middle of the door. And you go, why is it rusted out in the middle of the door? You start exploring it a little bit more. In some cars used insulation where they actually took, like, they used to spray tar and then they put like this kind of fiber stuff inside to help eliminate the sound, give the door a good solid feel. But what would happen would, that fiber stuff would like would lose its adhesion to the tar over time. And then now suddenly you've got a big valley across the whole inside of your door where water and dirt and everything gets to collect and start. So I don't like putting Dynamat what I do like using inside door panels is used inside the door is the same stuff that a lot of them use from the factory, and that's like an undercoating kind of material.
Yep.
Um, I know our good friend Bob Wilson on RJ Restoration. He's got his own process to duplicate the way they did it on Mustangs, where he, basically sticks this wand with before all the glass is in there. He sticks it down into the window hole, and he sprays the whole inside panel of the door. That in that case, it acts like it helps seal it up better in there, and it also provides sound deadening. But you want to make sure that like all your weep holes and everything in the bottom of the door are still open and accessible.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with that. That's what I
It's
do.
got to be super clean.
Yeah, yeah. You want to make sure, if you're going to be spraying stuff in there, you want to make sure it's clean enough that stuff will adhere. You don't want it like all dirty or anything. You want to make sure it's a good clean surface in there. And I do that more often than I put Dynamat inside my door panels. I have done that too, and it does add thickness. And on some cars, it can make putting the door panels back on a nightmare.
Sure.
Getting like window cranks to clip on, and
Mhm.
without applying tons of force and stuff. So
I didn't put any on mine. I just put the water shield on and put them back. I don't even. My windows aren't up when I drive my car unless it's raining, so I don't worry about noise or.
and you're not driving in the rain that much,
Yeah, I'm not. No,
Pretty much the windows are down.
windows are down all the time.
The okay, Bootsy Griggs. Right. I have a 1974 Delta 88 Royal convertible. That's a big car.
It's a big car.
That's a big car. That I started working on and have trouble locating replacement door panels. Do you have any suggestions? That's going to be a tough one. Yeah, the door panels. Uh, the door panels are probably going to be the same as the coupe and two door.
I had so many different trim options back then. It'd be
Yeah. Yeah, I can't, yeah, it's possible that they had a design difference for the convertible. While the panel will fit, it could be a design difference for the convertible.
and colors.
And yeah, and unfortunately, I'm not aware of anybody repopping door panels for that era of car. My first thought would be I'd do whatever I could to salvage what I had. You can, a faded vinyl and all that stuff. We even have some videos on the site on making, repairs on broken plastic where you actually retexture them with some of the SEM texture spray. Check out some of the, we got some videos on the site that are good to check out on that, where you can, and then reusing like a vinyl paint or vinyl dye to recondition and brighten it up. And Ross has like done entire headliners in cars with vinyl dye.
It works.
And you would say, hey, that's an insane idea, but you look at it and it looks good still. Nobody says, wow, was that a green headliner? They all just go, nobody notices. So, and I know people that have even used that for carpeting and stuff. And although I can't imagine that working, but it does. I don't know. So you can recondition them. As far as looking for new ones, if their pattern is different for a convertible versus a coupe, convertible parts are always hard because if they're left outside at all in any junkyard or whatever, the tops go bad on them, and then the entire interior goes to heck.
I don't think they are. I really don't think the.
Yeah, I can't answer that one way or another.
Would be
but as far as
where the top is, that'd be different, obviously. But
finding nice interior parts. You look in the northern states, and even in here in the upper part of the salt salt belt, because the cars usually rusted out and died long before the interior wore out. And I've been to many junkyards where they have vintage and older cars where they pop open the door and the interior looked better than the car that I drove to the junkyard. And you just go, wow, So the northern states, for whatever reason, it doesn't get as hot and it doesn't get as dry, and I've seen 70-year-old interiors that look good still, but and where you go down to New Mexico, they have beautiful sheet metal and bodies, and all the metal is near perfect, but the interiors are just toasted inside of them, and just because it gets so hot and dry that all that vinyls and plastic. So you might want to go on a site like car-part.com. Look for, they don't necessarily have all the interior parts listed on their website, but look for like a trunk lid or door or something like that for that year, make, model of car. And you'll be surprised how often, if they have a car, then it pops up on the site, and some place that has one, and in a lot of cases they'll have pictures of it and stuff like that. So and if they don't, you can always just say, hey, I know this junkyard has one, and you can call over there and find out if it has the interior parts you're looking for. Steve Bonetter Bund. Yeah, I messed up your name. Sorry. Do I need to spray glue on top of the floor insulation before I lay carpeting? Thanks for your advice.
I haven't.
No, 'cause usually they have the backing on it, and you're gonna, I mean, usually they have it.
I've done it both ways. On a '67 Firebird, though.
Hey, it's the same car?
Yeah, that's a
It is.
Steve.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
On a '67 Firebird, though, you probably won't need to use adhesive. It could be that you get. I have used adhesive. Usually, it's if I got like a trouble spot or a spot that just doesn't want to lay down. If I usually that I know Bob Wilson, when he's carpet for a Boss 429 car, he'll spend 8 hours just getting the carpet to lay down exactly the way he wants, and then that involves him putting a lot of times waiting, steaming, and doing a lot of things to get it to fit perfectly. $350,000 for the car when he's done, but yeah, that doesn't mean you can't put the same kind of amount of effort into fitting your carpet, even if it's not a $350,000 car. You can spend that kind of time, get the fit that you want. And with carpeting, don't ever use a heat gun.
Right.
Don't grab your heat gun and start going at it, because that's the one way guys mess up carpet, because that nylon fiber will melt.
Yeah.
So I always want to use steam. And I prefer the short little self-contained kind of almost portable steamers, because they're creating the steam right there and it's really hot. But I know some of the pro shops, they have the big fancy commercial ones where it's a big one that you bring in. And to me, by the time the steam gets there, it's cooled down a bit and it's not nearly as hot. But you can get a cheap steamer down at the Walmart, and it'll do the job. It'll help you get that carpet to lay out and the way it should be.
He could glue it on his matting if he wanted to. He doesn't have. I mean, can if he
Yeah,
wants to, but
yeah,
it's
and
not going to move around on the carpet.
yeah. Like I said, usually if I get a trouble spot, especially like up by the hump or something, where it just doesn't want to lay in there right, I use an upholstery contact adhesive, and just kind of spray a little bit in there, let it tack up a bit, and then lay it down, just so
Sure.
I'm not always patient enough to want to spend 8 hours getting my carpet to lay down. Yeah, but just be aware if you glue the whole thing down, you got a real job ahead of you getting it back out again if you ever got to pull your carpet. William writes, I'm rebuilding the top end of a 1978 Dodge Ram Charger 440 engine. From what I can tell, the stock cam should work well for the low end torque that I'm most interested in for four-wheeling. Okay. In the Colorado mountains. Ooh, that sounds like fun. With the engine at only 55,000 miles and no cylinder ridge, can I get by with only replacing the timing chain and gears and flat tappet lifters along with new aluminum heads, intake, manifold, and carb? As opposed to what? Replacing the pistons and if the engine's not showing wear or ridges yet, and you're probably fine. The thing you're going to risk is if it is burning oil, you're probably going to still burn oil or lose a little bit of compression.
55,000 miles, I would think,
Yeah.
once the compression changes, what type of heads he's putting on there.
Yeah.
Replacing
Well, I imagine
heads.
if he's going with the aluminum heads, and it's going to have probably a smaller combustion chamber, and so he's going to up the compression
You're gonna
some.
change the compression, the pressure on the rings. It might get worse, but
Yeah. But I don't know. With 55,000,
pretty low miles.
pretty low mileage for a 78.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that you'd be fine.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going with the stock cam, you're not.
Is he leaving the stock cam in it?
Yeah, he's going with the stock cam because he feels that give him the low end torque that he needed. So he's not replacing the cam. He just wants to. So he's just going to tighten it up a bit, timing chain, gears, and lifters, I suppose, and.
Changing the lifters, huh?
Yeah, I'm not sure why you're changing the lifters if you're not replacing the cam, unless you're putting in a new stock cam.
Right.
Otherwise, I just stick with the
I
lifters you have.
The same one in there,
Intake manifold and carb. Yeah. I think we think. My opinion is you can get by with what you got. And if you start, by going to the aluminum heads, you're going to probably increase your compression by, you'll have better flow with the aluminum intake and probably, more flow with a bigger carb. If I wouldn't be afraid to go that route. Not like I said, like we mentioned, maybe there's no need to replace the lifters. If it's only got 55,000 and you're not replacing the cam, if you are replacing the cam, put in new lifters.
Unless it was rusted.
And that's true.
It must have sat for a while.
Yeah, it's only got 55,000 on it. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Sometimes you open up those motors, and they're fine. Even sitting in the junkyard, I found some pretty clean internals on some motors. But yeah, I guess our opinion is go ahead, go for it. There's no reason to put in new pistons or rings or, especially if you're not showing any ridge wear. It obviously at that low of miles, there's not a lot of wear internally. So go for it. Let's see. I have my grandfather's 1960 F100 that needs a total makeover. It's not a unibody. I have a 87 Ford Ranger chassis that we want to use, will it fit right on it, or right on, or do we need to modify? Um,
We'll have to modify.
yeah, I'm not convinced it'll fit right on. I haven't done a Ranger. So a Ranger is a narrower truck, um, but in while the frame rail between a
60.
Ranger and a 87 Ranger and a 60 F100 may be close, because the Ranger is a narrow frame,
Yeah.
and when you go back all the way to 1960, those were still
Always had
narrow
narrow
frames
frames.
too. Um, but it's your front suspension width and your rear axle width I'd be more concerned with.
Start taking measurements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wheelbase.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I would approach it. I'd measure my wheelbase, I'd measure the width of my outsides of my axle flanges, front and back. Start figuring out, what will this work? Can this work? Uh, Chassis swaps are a popular thing among, a lot of cars. There's so many, you know, 49 Mercuries with Buick chassis under them, just because you can get
It's
like
close.
more modern suspension. A 60 Ford F100 does not have the greatest ride in the world, because back in those
Yeah.
days, trucks were really
Strange.
considered as just a tool.
Truck,
They were never, nobody looked at a 60 Ford pickup back then
Is that a
as
straight front
something
axle?
that anybody would drive on a regular basis. They were used to, haul stuff into town, or to a construction site or something like that. And I remember when I bought a pickup in 1970 something, and all the neighbors were like, well, "What do you want a truck for? You could have a car." Because back then a truck was considered a tool, and you bought one if you needed to use one for something. The So in looking at the newer Ford Ranger, 87 Ford Ranger is going to ride a lot better suspension, better, everything else. It just becomes a matter of, yeah, wheelbase,
Yeah.
width,
Will it fit?
and then start figuring out what you got to do to get odds are you're going to have to modify the cab mounts to get the cab to sit on the frame right. You're going to have to modify the box mounts to get the box to sit on the frame right.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, that's just building different mounts for everything. So
Two is you got to look at is definitely the width of those axles are going to be narrower, I would think.
on a Ranger,
Yeah, from an F100.
yeah,
So, and then the front ones probably, depending on what your Ranger it is, because they
yeah.
had, you'd have to change that out to different something else too. So
Okay, next question. Oh, wait, here's follow up. Also, where is the best 1964, 1960 F100 custom cab replacement restoration place? Um, Good question. I have not worked on a lot of 1960 F100s at this point. And it's been a while since I've bought parts for them. I know there are companies like LMC that handle a lot of replacement truck parts. There's a number, a Max Auto, I think, handles a lot of replacement panels for those
I don't
early,
know.
automotive direct, or some of these places that may have the parts that you need. That I guess that's where I'd start,
Right.
and figure out what's available, and then from there figure out. I doubt there's going to be a lot of duplicate production. Some cars, it's like there's like 3 or 4 different manufacturers for quarter panels for my 68 Firebird, but but some are better, and some I know metal guys that will say, oh yeah, you want to use this part from this manufacturer and this, and it's not always one manufacturer has a complete system where all the parts fit perfect. So it's best to start asking around who has the best parts to kind of fit what you need. But unfortunately, for a 1960 F100, you're probably not going to have a lot of choices. There's probably maybe one guy stamping them out,
Yeah.
and then maybe like 5 or 6 different people that are selling this guy's parts, and they're putting their stickers on them. In which case, you take what you can get, and then you make, you fix anything that might be wrong with any of the replacement parts that you need. The 1940, 19, he has there's a guy with a 1949 Ford F1. Is it possible to replace the entire floor pan by lifting the cab a couple of inches instead of removing the cab completely? Um, I have a small garage and no cherry picker. Yes, I would say you can, but you're probably going to have to come up more than 2 inches, because on a 49 Ford F100, it comes out and it drops down over the floor itself, drops down over the frame rails, and you're going to have to lift it. If you were going to try to slide in a pan, it's possibly you could come in from the top side too, though.
Or come out the back or front.
Yeah,
Yeah,
can it be done? Yeah, can you do it? You know, I don't. Yeah, you have a small garage. I get that. I've worked in. I've done amazing things in apartment building garages too. But
Yeah.
if you got access to
Somebody could lift it.
roof trusses, and you can get something, and it's a solid enough. Sometimes you can, put a block and tackle and get, lift the cab up, and get yourself enough room without using up a lot of space.
Yeah, because you got the whole center hump. I mean, you got what? You have to get it up higher than that.
You got to get it high enough to,
Get that underneath the.
but
Might be able
I
to
don't
bring it
know.
up the back.
And if, without having, it's the kind of thing you almost want to look at it. What do we want to do here? Um, because I know guys who've replaced uh, cab floors
Panels.
without taking the cab off the frame at all, and but we got to remember there's a lot of places where that cab, up in the cowl and the back, as long as you have good mounts in the cab where you can get to the floor. The best job you're going to do is, of course, the best job you're going to do is to get the cab off the frame completely, and then take care of the whole floor. It's easier, it's quicker. You've got access to both sides then, and you can, weld it and do a perfect job. Okay, that's a perfect world. Can it be done other than that? Yeah, I think it could be. Um, it'll take a little more head scratching and thinking about how you're going to do it.
If it's a full complete floor, it's probably going to be a much bigger job. You got to get it up pretty high.
Yeah.
If it was 2 halves, it'd be a lot easier.
Right.
You can almost do it from the inside then. Feed them in, position them. But a full floor,
He would have the option. He couldn't he have his floor and put it in and who have it?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Be a front and a back.
Yeah. Or
Or
right left.
right down the hump
Right
too.
down the hump.
Side
Yeah.
to
And
side.
I think a lot of them, I don't know availability in parts like that, but you have some choices to get a full floor, or you can get a half, or you can get a quarter.
Yep.
So
But your halves are, I thought, front and back.
I've
You
seen
can
them
get either
both
way.
ways. I've seen them right and
Yep.
left. I've
Yep.
seen them, yeah. And I think, and for some people that works out better. And then actually some guys only replace half the floor or part of the floor because Yeah, I know a lot of guys that'll like, yeah, hey, I got a rusty wheel well in my driver's side, by my gas pedal, and I'll cut that part, and then I'll assume, well, shit, as long as I cut this one, I should cut this one too over here. When actually the sheet metal is perfectly fine on the passenger side because it didn't get as much moisture and stuff
Yeah.
hauled into it and stuff. So, it's not uncommon to replace part of a floor or to even replace them in portions at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. It might be easier to get the job done by doing it in
Yeah,
pieces or
yeah,
sections.
that's true. Yeah. Kurt writes, he's getting a gray buildup in the carb of his 54 Ford mainline. The gas appeared clean. Glass bowl Holly. Glass bowl Holly. Should I drain the system and clean the tank, or is there something else I should do to prevent gumming up the carb and fuel pump? A gray buildup. My first thought when I hear gray buildup is usually moisture. Um, but before I commit to that, gray buildup in the carb.
That's odd.
Yeah.
I mean, let's see, diaphragm's going bad or something.
If moisture in the gas
Moisture.
is there, but then again, part of me wonders, uh, is it backfiring or blowing through? But in a 54, that's even like an oil bath
Here.
air filter on that if it's the original. And that brings me back to wondering about um, moisture again to get a gray buildup. I don't know. What are your thoughts, guys?
I kind of agree. I mean, I don't know what would turn it gray other than moisture.
Yeah. Is there something inside the lines or tank that's contributing, or
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? But
Is it a good, if you've never cleaned out your fuels or your fuel tank, it's always a good idea, especially on a car that old, on a 70-year-old car. It's not a bad idea to clean out your fuel system.
could some additives do it? Some fuel additives, could that do it?
Yeah, well, it may. I hate to run if there is contamination inside the tank.
Release it.
I hate to run that all through the motor,
Well, for sure.
but I think but if your fuel system's clean and you're still getting it, maybe you try an additive to kind of clean things up. Although then it would, to me, part of me is like, well, if you clean the fuel system, where else could it come from? Where?
No, I mean, could an additive cause it?
Oh, perhaps.
That's what I
Perhaps.
meant. Yeah.
Perhaps. Um, yeah, if he's running like a lead additive for
Yeah.
his,
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
that's
they
true.
don't actually add lead; they add like simulated lead
Mhm.
to keep the valves from sticking and stuff. So, um, yeah, if you're running an additive, maybe you'd suspect that. If there's, maybe clean the entire fuel system. There's no fundamental, again, sometimes things are just the environment that they're stored in and stuff like that. Sometimes, because your engine will build up condensation and stuff inside just from sitting. Because that's usually what the number one culprit of sticking an engine shut or completely froze up is most of the time that is caused by, your engine stopped, and whenever your engine stopped, there's some cylinders with the valves open, and it's the moisture in and out of the engine as it heats and cools and in and out that causes that rust to build up and corrosion and stuff to build up inside of the engine itself. Uh, as far as in the carburetor, I'm not aware of what could be the ultimate cause of that, but it'd be worthy of at least cleaning the fuel system
Sure.
and maybe, putting in fresh fuels and stuff. Especially if you're running some kind of fuel stabilizer or something, I suppose. Dennis writes, I have a 55 Merc with a positive ground. I changed it to negative ground and added a MSD ignition coil, ignition module, and distributor. Now my tail lights don't work. Any answers as to why or what I may have done wrong? Okay. 55 Merc. What,
It had
55
positive
Merc, I think it was that 12 volt, but maybe he switched it. Maybe the car had already been switched to 12. The Now his tail lights won't work. Okay, so by switching it from positive ground to negative, it should.
You're just reversing the field.
Yeah, you're reversing the field, so the lights should still function properly.
You did change it to 6 to 12.
I also changed the mercury from 6 to 12 volt. The Okay, so you may have my only, normally all the 6 volt switches and everything have no issues going from 6 volt to 12 volt because 6 volt is usually bigger. 6 volt normally ran heavier wire because they wanted no drop in voltage by the time it got to anything, and they normally are heavier wire and heavier contacts and everything else, which is kind of contrary to the way a lot of guys think of it. But so you shouldn't have any issues either, in making the 6 to 12 volt. Shouldn't have any issues with wire size and anything else. I I would start by, how would I attack it? I'd start by testing individual circuits. I would find where my wires were running, where the wires to my taillights ran up through the body. I'd test them somewhere along the line, or I'd power them up somewhere along the line, see if I get my taillights came on, if I powered them up direct. And then I would just keep isolating it further up the system. I check switches and check, there isn't a lot to a lighting circuit. Um, it could be up in the steering column, could be the light switch itself. It could be, when you change from 6 to 12 volt, did you change the bulbs? Because all the 6 volt bulbs will pop like flash bulbs as soon as you put 12 volts to them. Uh, the a number of things I would check along the line. I would start, I'd start going backwards or either going backwards or forward to isolate the problem. See if I have voltage coming out to the lines. You can check that with an ohm meter. If I don't have voltage, then I know I've got to keep going up the system. Factory wiring manual would come in good at helping you to isolate that. Next, we have a 1965 Mercury Montclair Marauder, 4-door hardtop. It has optional factory power seat belts. Wow. Which back then meant one pair of lap belts in the front. I'd like to add additional belts, but I'm surprised that the seat belt buckle in the 65 is unknown by anyone. I've shopped. Where might I be able to find such a seatbelt buckle? No?
Power? Did he say they're power?
Well, he did say they're power, but I'm assuming he's just looking for a set of it's the optional factory seatbelts, which back then meant one pair of lap belts in the front. Okay, so he wants to add more seatbelts in his car, but he's having trouble finding. Well, it would have been early in cars having seatbelts in them.
65.
Yeah, it was an option.
The
I
yeah,
bet they are hard to find.
I would, I would, yeah, my first thought is anywhere you can find them, do the internet auction site kind of thing, the eBay and the internet classified things like Craigslist and whatever, and
It's going to be hard to find an
vintage
exact buckle.
vintage car junkyards trying to find a Mercury Montclair with seatbelts in it.
Right.
There wasn't a popular option back then, and that's why they had to pass a bunch of laws to get people to wear the darn things because they just weren't that popular because people didn't want to be restricted. So it, like I say, car-part.com, look for a Mercury Marauder out there, of your year. You might be surprised. It is a Ford product, so maybe in the Lincoln they use the same, a higher end car, maybe they use the same seatbelt buckle. Usually seatbelt buckles weren't so specialized that they made them for each model back then.
Especially back then. You think they made it for the same one for years.
So maybe your better solution is to look at a Lincoln or maybe some of the Fords, but I would guess you might have better luck looking at some of the Lincolns for seat belts as well. That's my guess. That's where I'd start. I'd find out what the seat belts looked like in a Lincoln Continental
Yeah.
or something, and because those cars would be more prone to
have them.
get extra
That's
stuff
gotcha,
thrown
yeah.
into them. Oh, he included. Well, he included
looked
a
where he's looked.
link to what is. We'll try it real quick. To what is
That's
seat?
the buckle?
That is a. Yeah, that's a unique. Oh, it's like a two-part. Remember those
Yeah.
where
and
it
the
was
flip
folded
lever.
in half?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Hey,
do
thanks.
remember those.
Thanks for sending the pic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It. Yeah, I recall them, and
Yeah.
I think I would start searching for Lincoln stuff too and stuff like that. I think you might have better luck.
I'm trying to think what car I had that had those.
You had
I
them.
had those in one of my cars.
Did you?
And I'm trying to figure out what it was.
No, they are unique, but I would think that you've got to they're probably out there. It's just a matter of finding out what. And I assure you, they didn't use them for 1 year either. They probably
Right.
used them for a few years, and they probably used them in Mercury's and Lincolns and maybe some Ford. Um, and but again, that's early in the adoption of seatbelt. So it would.
Yeah, I think when I had them was my Corvair.
Corvair.
Corvair. I think I had those in my Corvair.
All right, we're gonna go to Jim. Jim's got a question. He writes, "I'm trying to align the doors on my 1928 Model A Sport Coupe. Due to the frame sag, I had to add 1 inch spacers between the body and the frame. Is this too much, and will it possibly impact steering?" Maybe. The steering, I'm trying to remember. Model A, I believe, is a drag link, and by raising the body, you're also affect. I don't think it will. I don't think it's going to affect dramatically your steering as much as maybe your steering wheel angle, your column angle a little bit, and maybe give you some issues with getting it all to fit. I think, Jim, my biggest concern right off the top is if your frame is sagging an inch, rather than adding 1 inch spacers, fix the frame. The uh, Model A frames they're not tremendously complicated. I got one leaning up against the wall back here, and it's pretty much straight channel. So my first thought comes to, well, fix the frame so it's straight, and then you don't have to deal with trying to get other things to fit to adapt to that. And I know I'm preaching now, but it just, the frame is your foundation to everything that fits on top of it, and you want that as straight and square as possible before you start building everything on top of it, because otherwise you end up trying to make stuff fit. And as soon as you start trying to make stuff fit, that's when you end up with a car that you're not 100% happy with in the end, and everything doesn't work and operate and function the way it should and everything else. So yes, you can probably make it work with the frame of it the way it is. My recommendation would be fix the frame. If the frame is sagging, fix the frame, and you'll be much happier with the end result.
Definitely.
Yep.
All right, guys. One more thing. Again, right down below here, we have the bolt circle guide. Stuck to my table. Bolt circle guide down below, free download. Go ahead and get that. It's a great resource to have. You can cut it out. Take it with you. You ever looking for a set of wheels, or you see a set of wheels, a great deal on a set of wheels at a swap meet, but you're not sure if they'll fit your car. You can find out, real quick if you've got one of those. You can just drop it in over it, and you got it folded up and in your back pocket. We're at the top of the hour. Once again, time goes really quick, guys. Appreciate everyone coming out today, and thanks for stopping by. As always, a bunch of great questions. We had a bunch of others printed out ready to go, but we'll get answers to those next time. So we'll see you back here in March.
When it's warmer.
Then it'll be warmer, and hopefully I'll have this done by then.
Maybe.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.